Can you think of any problematic language we use on a daily basis that might reinforce gender biases?
I love this question because I think all of us, in some way or the other, consciously, unconsciously, are making use of a pattern of language where we are more in a tendency of using he, him, whether it comes to godly figures. Oh, he's gonna help us out, right? Most of the time it's rather than she's gonna help us out.
Yeah.
So there is a gender bias involved with that. And even with driving, or even though we know there are glass ceiling effects and things, but the unconscious pattern or mode always drifts back to the gender biased language.
Yeah, can you share some other examples or like phrases that you've heard that like very subtly undermine women's authority or competence?
Okay, so I think this comes to my mind more often. And the more I tend to see it now, I've started realizing even when you're reading a book, it's very interesting to see that the person made it to the one of the top companies, or I mean, I'm not able to really articulate this, but he had all the power and he was so bright and he was so brilliant. So most of the textbooks, even school books or novels that you read, there is more of the dominance of he or him. Even in our own natural language, we use more of this way of talking rather than she feels unnatural, she feels unrealistic, and it's like, well, it doesn't fit in, blends well. So I've regardless of our school books, our textbooks, our science books, lots of things, I think it has a lot to do with the gender bias.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you just think about, like, you know, when people say mankind, why is it mankind? Why isn't it womankind? What do you mean? Like, you know, it's just like, oh, when people say, oh, like man, like a man, and they're just talking about population in general. They're like, no, you're saying a man, you're male, you're not saying female right now. And I think there's a lot of these subtle things that people don't notice, and we just, you know, I think even us don't notice, and that we're probably using, that are just reinforcing these stereotypes more and more.
And just to quickly add to what you said, now I'm able to actually recall some words. Sportsmanship.
Yeah.
And brotherhood. It was so after such a very long time that sisterhood concept came in. Otherwise, brotherhood or sportsmanship, you should demonstrate your sportsmanship. Well, what about other people then? If it's manship. So, I think the way we're using these words, we are in a way reinforcing those gender stereotypes in a very subtle way.
Yeah, of course. And then we can also talk about how people make these harmless jokes, right? Such as like, oh, it's that time of the month. And it's just considered as just joking. What do you think is this role of this harmless humor? And what does it play? What role does it play in perpetuating biased language against women specifically?
I think the harmless humor, first thing, we really need to know if that's a humor in first place, or is it disguised as dirty or dark humor, and further on attaching a layer of humor to it. So if you know it's not funny, it's trying to create some sort of a harm, and we label it as, oh well, it's just harmless. Anything that you hear, anything that you come across in life, it will leave an impact on you. You watch anything on the news, you see anything on the street, you come across anything on your phone, it leaves an impact, right? Even if it doesn't impact you there and then, it's going to go deep down into your subconscious. You probably end up seeing something in the dream, and then you wonder, why did I see that? Where did I get that from? Well, there are numerous things that you come across throughout your entire day. And time and again, repeating certain words, repeating certain things is a way of reinforcing that gender stereotype. Well, that's just harmless. Why are you taking it so seriously? When in reality, it's helping you reinforce the gender stereotype. And it's just like, you know, this thing is reminding me of, oh, well, yeah, this is that time of the month, and everyone starts saying this. When I came here, to this country, and I was told, oh, it's always cold and it's so bad, and just the winters are going to be very harsh, the winters are going to be harsh. And then the other thing I heard was everything is expensive. And when you see that energy around and the frequency around people talking about this again and again, you start telling the same thing to the other person who comes in, who's a new person to this place. And then I just caught myself doing the same thing. And I was like, oh, well, no. I don't want to fall into that unconscious trap.
No, but I think that's an amazing example of how it works. Because I went to school in a different province for a bit, and after that, once I stayed there, I came back here and I was like, yeah, this place, it's always raining, this place is always this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm literally repeating what people would say over there. And I'm not even thinking about it. And another phrase I can think of that I think every single girl has heard in her life is boys will be boys.
Oh, this is insane. This is on point. Yeah,
I think we all collectively have a hatred towards that sentence because it's just such an obscene phrasing because it just justifies behavior. Yeah. And girls will hear this when they're younger and repeat it. It's like, it's fine, boys will be boys. It's like as if somehow your anatomy excuses your behavior.
Yeah.
Like, excuse me, no, just because you're a boy, you made a mistake, you need to own up to it.
Be accountable.
Exactly.
It's not even about the sex or the gender divisions that we have.
Yeah.
You are a human, own up to what you did.
And this saying is so, people are like, again, oh, I'm just saying it just like that. No, you're allowing this to be an excuse for other behavior. If you say that to your little boy, let's say you have a kid, you're like, oh, boys will be boys. Not only are the girls hearing this, but he is too.
Exactly.
So later on, he's going to be like, but it's okay because I'm a boy, right? This mentality is implanting itself into his brain, and that's how you're raising him.
I agree 100%, and I just love it, the concept that you just brought up.
Yeah, these types of subtle phrases, biased language that we use go both ways. They are detrimental to girls, but then they also justify too many behaviors for men. And then
Certainly.
I also wanted to bring in the role of social media in this. How do you think the portrayal of women in social media and the language they use to describe women's bodies and emotions, how do you think that plays into this language bias that we're speaking of?
Love that question. I think social media has a lot of role to play, and even in terms of the language that we use, sometimes you find, I've come across reels personally, and I've seen, oh, why are you crying? Are you a female? I was just, and it was masked as humor. Oh, it's funny. It was about like, oh, the guy is crying and then someone just walks up and says, oh, are you a female? Why are you crying? Why can't you be man enough? And then there have been other examples that I've just come across, which is like, just talking about, oh, dad's area of expertise and mom's area of expertise, and then they'll show moms being more involved in laundry or kitchen things, and dad's more towards gardening and driving. And like, why are we reinforcing those gender stereotypes? Where has this come from? And then we laugh on those jokes, finding it as funny, when in reality it's just reinforcing the gender stereotypes for us, for the future generations too.
Exactly. I mean, like, sure, it's funny, but then, next time you see a family, immediately your brain's going to be like, oh, dad does all the car work, all the, shoveling this, and then the mom, it's the kitchen, if the child gets hurt, it's all this. All these little things stay in your head and they morph the way you view life, right? It's not... If you hear something often enough, it's going to be stuck in your head, whether you want it to or not.
Of course. You will find yourself repeating that. Exactly. As I said, I was doing it.
Exactly. Like subconsciously, it'll come out, even though it's, meant to be a joke.
Yes.
So what do you think we can do to consciously change this language? How can we it's such a difficult thing to change because it's so used. It's worldwide. It's a worldwide phenomenon.
I agree.
We all use it. I think I've also been guilty of using the phrase "be a man." I don't want to, but I'm sure I have said it. So what do you think we can do to change this?
I think the first way is, okay, let me start with an analogy. I find analogies way more easier. When you want to focus on how you're managing your budget, your expenses, right? Your expenses and your expenditure. You create a budget and you track where am I spending throughout this month? And then at the end of the month, you look like, oh, well, yeah, this is where I can cut on. Probably I can cut on my entertainment expenses to shift my salary more towards investment side or whatever financial goal you're trying to achieve. With regard to your language, you cannot change until and unless you track the way you speak. So when I say for budgetary thing also, you first have to track your budget. Yeah. It's the same way you have to track your language. Where am I using a biased language? And each time you find yourself, you catch yourself using biased words, note it down. Oh yeah, this is where I do. See how many times in a month you do it. You'll exactly know where is your bias. And then you start switching that. Every time you do now, you're like, no, I have to switch it. But without awareness, you think some magic spell will be cast on you someday and then you're going to change. That's never going to happen. Everything starts with awareness. And when I say, of course, here, moving beyond self-awareness, you will have to track the biased language that we use every day, every single day. And especially when it comes to God and God's help or God's grace. Sorry to say, I'm also guilty of this, but I would also find myself, oh, he's there to save, or he's there as our support. Why he? That's my first question.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, I think just realizing how harmful these subtle things are. They don't seem harmful, right? Like, exactly. Everyone's using it. I want to use it too. And you don't really think about it. And I feel like realizing the repercussions of this also will help people in being like, oh, think it twice. When they're here, they're gonna hear themselves saying this and be like, oh, wait, no, I don't want to say that anymore. And I completely, you said like, you've said like, oh, God will help us. He's gonna do this. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even need to say he, because before, if someone says God and my head like immediately thinks of a man.
Yeah, exactly. That's
even now, like you don't. Even if you say like God and then you say she, and then my head's like, oh yeah, it can be she.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy how like embedded this is,
100%.
And this is a very a mainstream example. A lot of people use he when speaking of God. Despite it being a larger entity that should
it's
not
a universe,
really
exactly
being gendered. Yeah. But if you think about it. All the, you say doctor, people will typically think of a man. Engineer, think of a
100%,
man. You say
100%.
Teacher, it'll be a woman.
Yeah.
But say professor and it'll be a man.
Oh, I love this.
There you go.
Exactly.
And I think something that's starting to change these things is nurses. Because more men are starting to become nurses.
Oh, yeah,
and
exactly.
And now this is, ironically, now that men are joining a female-dominated industry, now it's like, but no, nurses is like not gendered. It's for both. And now it's becoming more talked to, despite so many other industries, so many other job titles
which are having gender bias.
Exactly, have gender bias, but it's not as talked about because it's quote unquote the weaker gender that's fighting for this.
Love that.
But all these things. It's I just want to show that yes, God is been like no, God is a woman. God is this. Yes, I love that. Good, but there's more. There's so much more to do because a lot of people still think of doctor. Imagine being a young girl and saying, I want to be a doctor, but every single person who talks about doctors is saying he.
Yeah, exactly. Even with this also reminds me of driving. Right? We are like, oh, the driver is waiting. He's going to put in the luggage. Every time it's so easy for us to say he.
Yep.
And sometimes I catch myself doing that.
I do too. No, exactly. But anyways, I really love where this conversation went. I do want to ask you a few closing thoughts. How do you think you yourself can start changing your language? What is something you would do every day to try to change it little by little?
I love when you ask me the self-improvement questions because this is something, my life's commitment that I have. And when it comes to the gender-biased language, I always keep an eye out and track. That's the thing.
Yes.
The strategy I shared with others is my own personal strategy that I use with myself. So I'll always ensure that I'm tracking and I'll be like, oh, well, no, you don't say this. Here you're being biased. And then I just note it down and then next time I revisit and I know I've used it a couple of times, I should be doing it. So I've been doing that. And oftentimes, even after that, even after tracking, I'll still find myself repeating the same cycle. So it really needs an effort, and with repeated practice, it's more like the neurons that wire together, fire together. So you have to just change the neurons wiring and it just changes.
Of course, that's great. I mean, breaking habits is hard, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we've been learning this since we were little kids.
100%.
But you got to start somewhere, and you got to start with yourself.
Exactly.
I love that.